Hello, all, and welcome back to another episode of Movies and Us, a weekly gathering place filled with conversations about movies, stories, and connection. My name is Jennifer Hahn.
And I'm Sarah Callan.
And today we're going to be reviewing the film Gladiator in anticipation of the sequel coming out here in a couple of weeks in November. So we're excited to dive in and talk about this movie. Sarah, do you want to kick us off with an IMDb summary for Gladiator?
Sure. A former Roman general sets out to exact vengeance against the corrupt emperor who murdered his family and sent him into slavery.
Okay. So in Movies and Us tradition, we are going to start off with our one-sentence summaries for Gladiator. Sarah, what is yours?
Mine is, men will literally become emperor instead of going to therapy.
Yes. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Therapy's a lot of work. I suppose like running an entire empire is also a lot of work, but arguably maybe a more fun option clearly for them.
We could have avoided a lot of things had some characters just, gotten some help. There's nothing wrong with asking for help, and I really wish that some of these characters would have just gotten the help that they needed.
So much of movies and TV, just so many things would be solved for if some of our characters went and did some heart work. Yes. My one-sentence summary is, apparently all we aspire for is to go from being fat and bored to strength and honor.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Nothing else exists, Jen. It's just those two things. You can choose one or the other. That's it. That's all you get.
Yep. Okay. Well, let's dive in and talk about Gladiator. Before we start talking about the movie, I'd be curious to hear your relationship to the movie before this most recent watch. So, were you a Gladiator fan? Did you watch this before? What did you think about it before? And how did that color or shape your thoughts going into this watch?
Yeah, I thought that I had seen parts of this movie before, and that is not the case. So I had never seen Gladiator before, which is not surprising because this is just not a Sarah type of movie. I really wasn't excited to watch this. And kind of the only reason why we're watching it is because the second one is coming out in November. So that's kind of the extent of my relationship with this movie. I knew that it won a bunch of awards, but I was like, this isn't a meme movie, so I think I'll watch other things instead.
Nice. And I had not seen Gladiator before watching it this time around as well. I had seen clips of Gladiator. There's some obviously iconic scenes that I'm sure have like crossed our eyeballs at some point. And then I do remember distinctly in the film class I took in college, our film professor was talking about like editing style and pacing and how that's changed over time. And so he specifically showed clips from Ben-Hur from many decades ago, and then showed the fight scene, one of the fight scenes in Gladiator, and had us count the number of cuts. And that was such a fun little exercise because the difference in delta between the number of cuts that are strung together is very, very large. And it's kind of his thesis was around just the way that we put together like action sequences now is very different from the styles of Hollywood's golden age. And so that's one of the primary memories I have related to this movie before watching it this time around.
Mm-hmm. And there are so many cuts in those action scenes. And it would probably be really interesting to add another film that's we can probably do it with Gladiator 2 when that comes out in 2 months. Mm-hmm. But to see, because I feel like filmmaking styles have changed so much over the last 20 plus years. Mm-hmm. So it'd be kind of fascinating to do a similar experiment like that, looking at the golden age, looking at maybe this range of film, and then kind of our modern today. Because I don't know, things are real different and things are changing at kind of a more rapid pace, I think. And so movies today look very different, and even editing styles I feel like are very different today than they were 20 years ago.
Yes, very much so. And I feel like the development of technology has also helped maybe change what we can do and what we might have needed to do with editing and cuts in the past, just from like sheer logistics, that now we have technology that can maybe help us create the same look and feel of the intended vision, but without having to cut just logistically, like, there's a tiger that's about to pounce in this direction. Like, we need to do a cut because we need to reel that back. The staging and logistics. There's a lot of differences in the way that we can achieve the same desired effect, perhaps, with technology now. So that would be fascinating to see. It's actually one of the things, I'm sure, when we talk about what we're hoping for, looking for, excited for in this sequel, I'm sure that the role of technology will be one of them. All right. Well, let's start off with our thoughts about Gladiator. What did you think watching this movie? Did it work for you? I know you were reluctant going into this. Did you end up being pleasantly surprised, or was it kind of how you expected it would go?
Jen, I went on quite a journey with this film. Like Maximus goes on a journey, but I also went on a journey. So the film starts out with just this text on the screen of all about the Roman Empire. And I'm like, wait a second. Are you really going to want me to root for the Empire? Hello, we've watched Star Wars. We know that the Empire is bad. Why are we doing this? And then they go into this really, really long war battle sequence. And I'm not a war movie person. I'm like, get me out of here. I don't want this. Is this whole movie going to be war? I did not sign up for this. I wanted to see a gladiator fighting. Why are we fighting a war? And so it just started off on a wrong foot for me personally. It hit all of the wrong notes for me initially. And then I could see how the film was like, hey, but like Maximus is a cool guy. Like he's devoted to his wife, maybe, mostly, whatever. He's devoted to his son. He's a good dude. He's pious. He's wanting to do the right stuff. And so then it's like, okay, I guess I can follow this guy as he tries to take down the corrupt emperor. And I was like, okay, we can get into that. So I think that there's a lot of good here. I think I maybe wanted a little bit more from the story. Also, I don't know, this movie is just so long. I had to take so many breaks for myself because I was like, I can't. Can we move it along? Why do we need to spend so much time on this one thing? And so it's one of those movies that I kind of struggled with because like I hadn't, all in all, it's an okay time for me. I think I rated it like 3 stars on Letterboxd. That might change. But it was nominated for like a bajillion Academy Awards. It won, I think, 5 of them. Yeah. It won Best Picture. Like, so this is a very well-renowned film. And that was something that I've been thinking about is like how awards are given and then it gives a movie a level of prestige. But like if a movie isn't for you, then you're not going to connect with it, even if you can respect the technical aspects and the craft that went into it and you can appreciate those things. You're just not going to connect with it as well. And then I was also trying really hard to not apply 2024 standards and like my 2024 perspective to a movie that was made 20 years ago. And so there's just a lot of things that I've been thinking about watching a movie that's a little bit older. It's only 24 years old. But the world is so different today. And I don't know, I'm bringing my 2024 self to this 2000 movie. And there's a little bit of a gap there that I was just like, I didn't expect that because 2000 doesn't feel like that long ago. So that also just made me feel old. So I don't know. I have a lot of thoughts, that are kind of all tangentially related to the movie, not necessarily about the movie.
Well, that's good. You know, like your brain has found a space to occupy, to reflect on as this movie has unfolded in front of you. And I suppose, like, yeah, this movie, classic is a word that's thrown around a ton, but I would say it is an iconic movie. A lot of people like know of it, and there's a lot of scenes and moments that are quite iconic. So we've ticked that box for you in in kind of movie history. But the point you made around this being a film from 20 years ago is really fascinating because we often talk about that with films of the past, and it's almost easier when it's from like the 70s or the 80s, and you can clearly feel that
Mm-hmm.
delta. And if anything, sometimes we're like, it looks so great for what they could do in the 80s, you know. And 20-year gap is a little bit more awkward, I would say. So I will be intrigued to see what your thoughts are about this new refreshed sequel, very much 2024 technology enabling it, and whether that helps or hurts, you know, your experience of the movie.
Mm-hmm. So, Jen, what did you think of Gladiator? Your first time watching it?
My first time watching it, yeah, I have to say I had such a good time watching this movie, which I really was like, am I just a dude? You know what I mean? Like, am I just like a middle-aged dude that's just like here for an epic story, a great revenge drama, some big action, and like I had a great time. I think there's a lot of things in the storyline that could have been a lot stronger, especially in some of the like themes and ideas that it's exploring. I think Joaquin Phoenix like really saves the Commodus character from being like an absolute caricature. So there's a bunch of thoughts that I have around the way that that character is written and portrayed. I think Joaquin Phoenix like does the best that he can with that role. But yeah, on the whole, I love this epic story. I thought I had a great time. It's a lot of fun. There's some set pieces and visuals that I find really compelling. And in general, I think Ridley Scott is an image maker. We talked about this a lot on our Napoleon episode. And I think a lot of what he does very well is being showcased in this movie. Similarly, a lot of things that are perhaps his weaknesses as a director are also showcased in this movie around the screenplay and the storyline and the pacing of the story. But uh, I think like have a character like Maximus is one that we can easily root for, and so I think it doesn't hurt the film as much as it does in maybe some of his other films that demand a little bit more from the nuance and complexity of the plot. But yeah, on the whole, I really enjoyed this movie. I had a great time, and I'm excited about the next one.
I'm so pleased. Yes. While I was watching, I was like, man, I wonder if Jed is just gonna dig this.
Yeah, and I totally did.
Yes. Oh, that's so much fun. I love
Yeah.
that.
Well, you know, I was thinking a lot about the Northmen, and there's a lot of similarities, obviously, in the themes and the plot. It's a story about someone who was noble and of like great standing within society that is like basically brought to these essentially like slave or humble roots, and then they have to like fight their way back, but you get to see like who they really are when they're pressed. And obviously there's a lot of like big violent action pieces, set pieces that are both in the Northman and this movie. And I would say like the Northman feels like the Viking version of Gladiator, and so it was fascinating to compare the two because I think there's a lot of similarities, but also a lot of differences in the style of execution, the storyline, and the plot. So I'm curious. I was trying to think back to how did you feel about the Northman, and then how does that like what are those differences that you see between a movie like the Northman versus Gladiator?
That is a good question. I think I largely liked the Northman, but I think there was also I think I had some issues with it. Oh, I don't fully remember, but I think I largely enjoyed it. And the Northman is basically just the Lion King, but live action
Yeah.
and Viking. Um, and that's what I remember of the Northman is that it's the Lion King. But I think that is a really interesting comparison. I think also The Northman was directed by Robert Eggers, and
Mm-hmm.
there's something about how he constructs visuals that is very intriguing to me. And so I think for me, from what I can remember of The Northman, it was really fun to watch because it looked so good. And I was just in awe
Mm-hmm.
of the way that a lot of the things were constructed, even though I had some issues with it, though I don't remember fully what those issues were. I think my biggest hang up with Gladiator is probably the story and the pacing.
Mm.
Like, I don't know. For me, this movie just dragged. There were so many times when I was like, do we need to be spending this much time in this location? Can we just move it along, folks? Can we get to another battle? Can we get to another like strategic political conversation? Can we like do something? Why are we just chilling
Mm-hmm.
here in this room with these characters? I don't care. And so I think I read that there was a lot of issues in production with the script, and it had to be, or the screenplay had to be rewritten and rewritten, and it was just constantly being revised even as filming was happening. And so I think I felt some of that kind of, I don't know, that lack of cohesion almost, and
Mm-hmm.
lack of investment in the characters too. I think I wanted a little bit more from them, so that I would feel more invested in this fight. Obviously, I'm rooting for Maximus because he's the good guy, and Commodus is the bad guy, and that's all we need. But I wanted a little bit more than that.
Mm-hmm.
Because then I think, if these characters are really three-dimensional and they're really interesting, and they have complexity to them, then spending time with them is more interesting and exciting. But if they're just kind of two-dimensional, kind of black and white characters without a lot of nuance or gray, then I was like, well, I don't need to spend any time with them because there's nothing else to learn about them. So I think those the screenplay issues and then the pacing issues kind of go hand in hand for me.
That is very fair because candidly, I feel like this movie is all about spectacle. And you're right.
Yes.
Like Maximus, what would be the big change in his character from the beginning of the movie to the end of the movie? I actually don't think that there's a big change in him. That the change is perhaps in how we get to see him continuously hold on to his virtues and his character. Like that is the dramatic tension, but he himself as a character, his primary desire is like Dorothy. He just wants to go home, to his family. And once that is not there anymore, then his primary goal is just revenge. And I think the movie's like dramatic storyline and emotional core is as simple as that. And there isn't as much nuance in that character's growth. So like as he's going from fight to fight to fight, he's not actually changing. We're just getting to see this really good guy fight against bigger and bigger foes, bigger and bigger fights, and like rooting for his survival. I would say like that is very true. Like that there's not a lot more to his character. I would argue there's maybe a lot more development in say for example his sister, right? Sorry, Commodus' sister. We get to see
Mm-hmm.
her really have to navigate these competing tensions of how will she battle between fighting for her son's survival versus her loyalty and kind of having to compromise on her morals when it comes to deference to her brother and all of the like interesting inner turmoil that happens from there. Like that, the emotional core of the movie for me was her, and then Maximus is just like there to see him fight some big bad things.
Yeah, yeah. She is so cool.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to spend so much more time with her. I was like, okay, fine, Maximus, you can go fight, you can do your thing. That's cool, bro. But like, when are we getting to the good stuff? When are we getting to her doing all of these like political maneuverings. And I really love how the film took the time to set up how much she was risking. And then you could see her being really strategic in choosing where she wanted to take risk, and then what she was doing to try and mitigate that risk too. And so like she is the most interesting character in this movie to me, and I wanted all of those moments of like political stuff that she was doing behind the scenes, all of the strategic thinking. I was like, yeah, yeah, I'm here for this, which is not the point of this movie, but I had a great time in those moments. I wanted more of that, but I am not the target audience for this movie that is all about spectacle, like you said. So it is what it is. It's fine.
You wanted the like House of Cards version of
I
like
did.
the Roman Empire
Yes.
with Lucilla and
That,
Commodus, and
yeah.
and Maximus is really there as just stakes. You know, like I think that would have made this movie stronger, is to see the political maneuvering, all of the drama and the planning and scheming, and kind of this like cat and mouse battle between her and Commodus, who's growing suspicion. Like, how does he maneuver in response to his suspicions of her? You know, like, and Maximus like really is there as like collateral. Needs to add stakes. So as they're doing their maneuvering, he is the one that is like having to receive and reap the side effects of their competing loyalties and suspicions of each other, as you know, Commodus becomes more and more volatile and has these bigger battles for Maximus to fight. Like, I think that would have been a stronger use of essentially the triangular relationship between the three of them. So it's fine if Maximus doesn't grow as a character, but we get these other like behind the scenes back room channels that then affect what happens in the arena. And then these two things now are intertwined together and actually impacting each other, of what happens in the fights with this character Maximus that obviously is easy to root for, and then the two in the background trying to figure out how to outsmart each other.
Yeah, that would be great. Sign me up right now. I'm ready to go. I'm ready to watch that movie.
Throwing a little bit of like The Favorite in there, you know?
Yeah, that'd be great. And then you're not sure like who to trust either, you know,
Yeah.
because like I don't know, political maneuverings, they can get kind of shady. So you can breed a lot of mistrust there, which would make things more interesting when you're not sure who is on the side of justice and who is right, you know. So I think there's a lot of fun that could be had potentially in maybe some of that moral gray area. And I don't know. Yeah, I want the House of Cards but Roman Empire version. That'd be great.
With
Let's go.
some sprinkles of The Favorite thrown in there.
Yeah.
It gets real zany and wild.
Yeah.
And then I think one of the interesting things that the movie starts to include, but then kind of backs away from, which could be really interesting, is how uh, Maximus had to figure out and learn how to trust Lucilla. And I think that is where the theme of us as the viewer not knowing who to trust between Lucilla and Commodus, and their political maneuvering with each other, could have really also intertwined well with our relationship to Maximus as a character, because he goes from being this incredibly noble and amazing guy, okay? Like, just like stellar character from the beginning of the movie. And when he loses everything, I think that needs to be like a shifting point for him. I thought that the timing of that worked well. You know, like we get to see him as a renowned general in the Roman army, and then when he loses his family, it ushers in this big question of like, what is he fighting for now? Like, what is he living for? What, when he's in that arena, what is he fighting for? And I would love to have seen that journey for him, from going from like maybe like absolute detachment and just being at like rock bottom, to pure vengeance and rage, to like, no, let's fight for something bigger than ourselves. Let's fight for Lucius's survival. Let's fight for Rome. Let's fight for the vision that Marcus Aurelius had given him. But we maybe needed a little bit more time for him to get to that point where he's like fighting for this vision of Rome that this great man that he respected had a vision for. And now he's willing to die for that, you know? And I would love to have like a rage moment in the middle there too, as he's on that journey to getting to the point of that larger vision. And then we can interweave all this interesting stuff with more secret meetings with him and Lucilla trying to convince him, but he doesn't trust her because he's still in his rage moment, you know. And then we get to he's just got to take the leap of faith, and if it's worth fighting for something bigger, he's got to figure out how to trust her. And that whole relationship with him and Lucilla developing and how she figures out to earn his trust would have also been a really great subplot storyline that gets woven into the larger storyline. And this all can happen in between the big, flashy, exciting fights that we're also here for and are excited to see. But I would love to have seen that journey for him, and then how that changes the way that he fights too, and the public persona that he is learning that he can curate.
Yeah, that sounds great. Having Maximus go through the stages of grief would be great. That sounds lovely. And then the fights could be a reflection of what he is processing through emotionally, internally. It could carry the plot forward and reveal, like you were saying, some of those political maneuverings that are happening behind the scenes. Like that way, these fights, in addition to being cool and spectacular and interesting to watch and all of the things, could be super pivotal to the plot as well. You know, we can have style and substance, as Paul Hollywood likes to say all the time on British Bake Off. We can have both in movies too. And so I think if the screenplay had been a little bit tighter, then some of these things could have worked together a little bit more cohesively to get us to where the movie wants us to go.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's like the ingredients were there. We just didn't like use them in the way that the movie needed to. But I would say like all of those pieces and ingredients are there. So one of the ones that I found really interesting, and maybe this is where we can include a spoiler. If you haven't watched Gladiator, it's been 24 years. So get on it and get prepped up for when the sequel comes out here in a couple of weeks. Okay. One of the storylines that I thought was really interesting, and there was like so much to think about thematically, but again, perhaps a little bit more watering of the seeds that were there could have helped it. But I loved the side storyline of Proximo's conversion over to the cause, because he starts out very much like Han Solo in Star Wars. Like he's just there to like make a buck and get out and doesn't care about this larger mission. There's this whole set of conversations where he's talking to Maximus, and he says, you know, like, I'm an entertainer. Like I'm just here to make as much money as I can. And if it means that I need to do some shady practices and like enslave human beings to do it, and because I've been through the gladiator life, like I'm okay with it. And we then see he makes this choice to self-sacrifice and give over to the larger cause. But like there's so much there that I think is so interesting and so relevant around the expediency that we might have to just calculate what we need, and then how we as people can buy into a vision and fight for something bigger than ourselves, and then self-sacrifice for that vision because we believe that it is right and it is good. Like there's so much there that I think is so interesting. And the ingredients are there, like it's kind of there, but maybe needs a little bit more to really land that fully. But I was really fascinated by some of these side plots that are really interesting and gave me a lot to think about.
Yeah, the other thing that the Proximo storyline had me thinking about is how we as humans can process difficult things and then subject people to the same difficult thing that we endured. Like sometimes if you go through a really hard situation, instead of that like kind of softening you, it almost hardens you so that you lack empathy for people who are going through the same situation as you are. And I thought that that was really interesting because he went through this and he fought his way through and he freed himself, and now he is subjecting people to the same hellish process that he went through. And I found that so interesting that we as humans can do that to other people and can, and I think it's probably just a defense mechanism, but we can become so hardened that we lack empathy for other people who are in a similar situation, and we can even put them through the same thing that we went through. And I just, I don't know, I found that fascinating for that character in particular.
Yeah, that's so good. That's so good. And I think it's only through a conversation that Proximo has in the ending of the film, the last like 30 minutes, um, where Maximus kind of calls him out for some of the choices that he's made. I think he says something like, well, yeah, you killed your master to earn your freedom or something like that. And it's that conviction that leads Proximo to really reflect and then make a drastically different choice to give himself over to this cause than he would have the whole time before. And I love that moment when Maximus says, are you in danger of becoming a good man? And it kind of reinforces the idea of like, yeah, Proximo has really shifted in his perspective. And it's through being in the presence and through conversation with Maximus that he's had this like conversion in like worldview and value system that is pretty transformational for that character.
Way to go, Proximo. We believe in you.
Yeah.
It was so funny when he first, like, when we initially see him, it's like, oh no, you're just an enslaver of people.
Mm-hmm.
But then you learn he's a little bit more involved and he's almost like their manager. And I was like, oh my gosh, you are Hamish from the Hunger Games. And Hamish goes on the exact same journey.
Mm.
He's so jaded and he's like, nope, I'm not trying to do this. And then eventually, Katniss and Peeta, they win him over and he comes to believe and he's part of the cause and like all of
Mm.
that. And I was like, oh my gosh. Did we get Hamish from Gladiator? Wow.
Mm-hmm.
I learned so much while watching this movie of all of these other movies that just ripped stuff off of Gladiator. I was amazed.
Yeah, you're like tracing it back now to like, I
Yes.
see, I see. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And there's something like really endearing and compelling about the transformation of a character like that too. You know, that really
Mm-hmm.
sees their ways fully. They've been like awoken to what they're doing and fully come to the good side. They come to the light. And it was neat to see. Definitely tugged on all my heartstrings when he makes that decision to give himself over to this cause. And you mentioned something about him kind of being the coach or manager for the gladiators. One of the other really compelling themes in this film that I was like, wow, this is so relevant and kind of universal over like all of human history, but very relevant for this year when Proximo tells Maximus to win the crowd. And we get to see him captivate the crowd and the crowd chanting and advocating for him to live when Commodus wanted to take him out and kill him. And, you know, Lucilla soon after says, today I saw a slave have more power than the emperor of Rome because the mob is Rome. There's just so much there to think about when it comes to the way that, like, one, crowds are fickle, but two, the power of like public figures and narrative and what people are bought into when it comes to these image creation for someone like Maximus, who's like new to the scene, and yet he has captivated the crowds, and he holds more power than Commodus does in a lot of moments, is really compelling for a year of like 2024, where we've got an election year and we have the age of public personas, I would argue, since social media set in, and how much the power of narrative shapes who has influence, who has control, who has say to change and shift the moods and perspectives of the people. And that is incredibly fascinating, especially with everything that's happening in society right now. And when it comes to like where the people find their direction on what to believe, what to advocate for, what to care about, often it comes from these public personas that hold a lot of sway.
Yeah, it's very interesting watching this movie in 2024. Like I kept thinking about politics while
Yeah,
watching
me
this.
too.
And there's a part towards the end where Commodus is talking about kind of his plans, and people are going to like cheer when their like freedoms are taken away, and like all of these different things that are going to happen, because he's putting on this spectacle, and so people won't realize, because they'll be entertained, so they
Yeah.
won't realize that their freedoms are being taken away. And it just made me think of like the rise of authoritarianism around the globe,
Mm-hmm.
and the rise of like fascism and things around the globe. And I didn't expect that this movie that was made 24 years ago, that is about the Roman Empire, would have relevant things to say about global politics that we are experiencing in 2024. So I've been chewing on that for a little while. Just there's we like to think that, you know, the world is so different today, and obviously it is, especially with technology and things, and civil rights and all of these things. So our world is very different, but there are also these consistent themes that will spring up over and over and over again. And so I think it's interesting to watch a movie like this and seeing those themes that are still so relevant to us today.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very much so. And kind of that, to your point, intersection between entertainment and politics, entertainment as politics, politics as entertainment, like all of those intertwinings, I feel like we get to see on full display here. I was thinking about it a lot in the fight with the tigers, and it's a place of entertainment, and yet he makes a political statement by choosing to not kill his opponent Tigris when Commodus has instructed him to. That act of defiance in an arena meant for entertainment, and kind of the way that the movie cuts between him in that act of defiance with shots of Senate members and them kind of like taking note really like highlights the fact that like this is a political act that he is making and has now perhaps inspired or ignited or created hope for a coup and to take out the powers that be. Like that political act was done in a place where there is entertainment. And it's because that's where the masses are. This giant crowd of the people seeing that act and supporting that act, calling him now Maximus the Merciful. Like that is a powerful movement shift. And it reminds me a lot of for example, radio being a channel that has been used by political candidates to be able to reach people, and that being a place where the people are is where we need to be. And if they're in the arenas of entertainment, like that's where influence can happen when it comes to the political statements and perspectives that perhaps want to be communicated to the masses.
So politics is basically the Little Mermaid. I want to be where the people are. We
Well
got it.
played.
Summed it up.
Wow. We I did not think we would be talking about The Little Mermaid in a review about Gladiator, let alone the intersection of that with politics.
I got you.
Well done. Well done. That was an iconic moment. I was like, where is she going with this? I'm like racking my brain, like, oh, okay, there's like different worlds. Okay, she comes out to land. She's not part of the sea. No, it's as simple as part of your world. The opening lines are part of your world.
Absolutely.
Wow.
Sums it all up right there. Wow. Got it. Way to go, Disney.
Way to go, Disney. Way to go, Gladiator. So much commentary on our day and age here in 2024 in an election year. Oh, it's so good.
So my serious point based off of what you just said,
That was your serious
is
point. What are you talking
that was
about?
my serious
Yeah, your
point.
second serious
Little Mermaid.
point.
Little Mermaid is very
It's
serious,
very serious
folks.
business.
Is that moment of Maximus the merciful? I got so excited about the Little Mermaid that
Merciful.
I can't talk anymore. Um, that moment is so powerful because for so much of the movie, I mean, pretty much up until that point in time, we haven't seen an act of mercy. We've only
Mm.
seen violence. We've only seen killing. And even in the arena, I I don't know, man. I found it so jarring to hear the crowds just shouting kill, kill, kill like
Mm.
over and over and over again. Like that shook me for some reason. And so then that moment when Maximus spares him in the arena, I think is extra important and extra palpable because it's such a tonal shift from everything that we had seen over the last, whatever, hour and a half. And so I thought that that was a really important moment, not just of defiance to Commodus, but showing these people that there is a different way to live. And we don't have to just do everything by killing, but we can show mercy. And that's actually something that's good that we should show to our fellow human beings. So I thought that that was just, that contrast was so well done.
Yeah, so true. So true. And what surprised me about that scene too is how much the people embraced that act of mercy and celebrated it. That's it's an oddly
Yeah.
hopeful scene because the other version of this that maybe is a far more cynical view of humanity is that they're like, why didn't we're here to see violence, we're here to see entertainment, like kill tigers, take them out, and then being upset with Maximus's act, and then therefore Maximus's act being purely an act of defiance, and he did not win the crowd. But the way that this was written, where the crowd embraced and celebrated and chanted this new name for him and this defining trait about him that they felt was worthy to be chanted, is oddly very hopeful, of the way that, like, that act was powerful for you, Sarah, watching this as a viewer, but also for the crowds to see that too. And the contrast of that act of mercy being something that they longed for without even realizing it. And it was worthy to be celebrated.
Hmm. We need a little hope in our movie that's all about murdering people.
Yeah. Yeah.
A little hope to keep you going, you know?
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, there's a really fun thought that I had in the middle of this movie, which like totally changed the way that I watched the rest of the movie. But it's the meta way that, if we like zoom out for a second, like the first fight that Maximus has in the Colosseum is a recreation of an ancient battle scene, the Battle of Zama. And, the announcer uh, introduces it as like this key battle from a moment from antiquity. And if you zoom out for a hot second, like, isn't that also us watching this movie? Like, we are watching a recreation of big battle sequences that are very violent on screen for entertainment. So, how am I, as a viewer of Gladiator, any different from the crowds of people in the Colosseum, And I think that was fascinating to mull on in the first part of this movie because, we've often, especially now, like, denounced the use of gladiator fighting as a form of entertainment, taking people's lives just to entertain the crowds. But and we often like denounce the audience members as like, that's so sick, like why would they go and watch for entertainment these like big violent things. And like, the movie, I don't know if the movie is intentionally but or not, but it was interesting for me to think about, like, so much of like going to the movies is watching a lot of violence too, and in a lot of ways we're not that different from those that showed up. Obviously, people are not actually dying in front of our eyes, but the level of entertainment that we get from seeing big fights and war scenes recreated on screen for us, and all of that is, it's kind of an interesting like thought train to go down and think about.
And I think that's why I was so disturbed while watching this is in certain moments we are in the crowd with them. And so I feel like I didn't want to be there. I didn't
Mm.
want to watch these dudes murdering each other, which is also interesting because I'll watch movies like Monkey Man or John Wick where like
Mm-hmm.
everybody dies. And I'm like, yeah, action, let's go. But for some reason, while watching Gladiator, I was like, guys, can we just sit down and talk? Like, do we have to be doing this? Do we have to be murdering each other? Do we have to be murdering tigers? You know, like
Yeah.
can we just take it down a notch? Can we chill? You know, do we have to be chanting kill as they're fighting to the death? Like, I don't know, man, this those scenes really jarred me. And so I think that shows that they were really effective for me, but it also made my watching of this movie a less enjoyable experience.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Like they had so many extras that they hired to be in the stands. They built out like the first tier of the Coliseum for a lot of those scenes, and obviously CGI'd the second and third and fourth tiers. But that feeling of the crowds and the like sense of that mob of the masses being here, I feel like the movie captured really well, and sounds like it was really palpable for you. I definitely felt that too, and I think a lot of that is in part due to like actually having hired and spent the money to have that many people in the stands and then only using CGI for the upper tiers instead of using CGI for like all of the background human beings. Like I think that was really effective to showcase that yes, like part of like filming this movie and filming the gladiator fights is obviously the fights, but so much of the spectacle is also seeing the masses there taking it all in as well.
Yeah, that size and scale of the masses is kind of overwhelming, you know? Like, wow. And I just, man, I could not fathom like okay, this is my plan for the day. You know, Jen, it's going to be great. I'm going to have such a good time. I'm going to go to the Coliseum and I'm going to see some dudes murder each other in cold blood. It's going to be great. I'm going to
Mm-hmm.
have so much fun. Like
Mm-hmm.
I cannot fathom that in my brain. And so I think that was just one of the things that I really struggled with while watching this is like, wow, this is how people used to live. And just I was then thinking about this thread throughout humanity and how we disregard humanity. Like we don't value human life a lot of the times, and it looks different from generation to generation how we treat each other. um, and so I think like those scenes really made me just like, wow, we have been messed up as a species for a very long time in
Mm-hmm.
just how we treat each other and kind of like the lack of dignity and the lack of care that we show to one another. And I was just like, guys, can we just like stop the games for a second? Like, these are human beings. Can't we do
Mm-hmm.
better? Can't we all do better? So I just I wanted to have some chats instead of fighting, which is not the point of this movie. So once again, I was doing it all wrong while watching Gladiator.
Just a little afternoon tea, a little chat, a little coffee
Yeah.
sesh with
Yeah.
Commodus, you know, like
Yeah.
did, I know you mean
Yeah.
glory, but um well
Yeah.
what's fascinating too is like Commodus is like played for such a like foolish character and so misguided in all of his ways, but he's also like incredibly on point as well in a lot of ways and
Mm-hmm.
understanding like what the masses are moved by and shaping that and giving them what they want. Like he's pinpointed something that is true and essentially corrupted it and taken advantage of it for his purposes to seek glory. But he's kind of right in his strategy to want to distract. And when people are happy and they're entertained, they will be distracted and you're more willing and able to give you the approval and favor and affection that you're looking for.
And you mentioned it earlier, but Joaquin kills this role.
Yeah.
He's so good in this movie. And I feel like Commodus is kind of a two-dimensional character. He's just so over the top, and yet Joaquin makes him interesting to watch because I don't know, Joaquin Phoenix is just such an interesting actor, and the way that he brings so much to every role, you really see that in his portrayal of Commodus. Because I feel like in maybe a different actor's hands, that character
So
either could have been like so evil or could have been like a laughing stock. And
mm-hmm.
I feel like Joaquin really walked the line between those things where he is being ridiculous and some points you want to laugh at him, and then other times he's like super duper evil and you're like, oh, that's scary. And at the same time there's this weird grief thing because he's doing all of this to try and get the approval of his father who has died because he murdered him. Like there's a tragicness to this character too that I think Joaquin brings to this role. Like he does so much, and I want to acknowledge that because he is fascinating to watch. I don't think the character is interesting. I think Joaquin's interpretation of the character is interesting.
Mm-hmm. Very much so. Like this two-dimensional character that is so flatly written, somehow Joaquin has been able to create dimension that didn't exist in the actual like text itself, but he brings that through the look in his eyes and the complicated like changing expressions that unfold within a conversation that he's having with Lucilla, and the way that Lucilla will make a comment and you can see that there's rejection in his eyes, but then in the next moment it's rage and vengeance. And so the way that Joaquin can bring that complexity to this character is really exciting to see. Yeah, there's a lot that like isn't there on paper that Joaquin really creates for this character. I think it easily would have been such a caricature of a role and would make this movie far less effective because Maximus is only interesting for us to follow when he has a foe that feels interesting for us to watch too. And so if Commodus was kind of a flat, boring, laughing stock of a character, I think the movie overall is like unbalanced. And so as much as Russell Crowe and every like that fortitude that he brings to the Maximus character is kind of like up against something that feels like it can't withstand it. And so this movie would not have worked and would not have be as strong as it is now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you need that strong counterbalance to make the story successful.
Yep.
And you see it's almost like a game of like tug of war between these two men, and you're at some points Maximus is winning and some points Commodus is winning, and you're just like, okay, how is this going to end? Obviously we know that the good guy is going to win in the end because that is what we do, but how is he going to get there? Because Commodus seems to have such control over things, and then it's fascinating when you start to see some of that control slipping from him, how he reacts, and there's more to Commodus than maybe people thought. And so I think that makes for some really suspenseful moments because Commodus is such a strong character.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very much so. And I think that's why Lucilla's character is so critical to this movie as well, because these two men are obviously foils of each other. I mean, that's very clear. They're like North and South poles. And their ways of showing up in the world and advocating and fighting for the things that they believe in are also night and day on polar opposite sides of the spectrum. And so Lucilla becomes really interesting because she's kind of vacillating between these two poles and trying to figure out, based on the cards that she's been dealt with, the role that she can play in this whole empire, like where she wants to maneuver and navigate. And I think that her steps are really fascinating in light of seeing like Commodus on one end of the spectrum and Maximus on the other. And she's kind of in the middle, and she's having to make much more strategic decisions and difficult decisions than the two of them. The two of them are kind of just like barreling forward in the directions that they believe in and colliding with each other in ways that we obviously see unfold. But Lucilla's kind of in the midst of it, trying to carefully navigate every step so that she can ultimately get to where she wants to be and where she needs to be to fight for her family and fight for her place in the empire as well. I love that Lucilla's not just like a protective mother, but we also see these other dimensions of her where she's got political ambition and cunning that she is also employing, and it's very much part of her decision making. And there's a comment from Marcus Aurelius earlier where he says something along the lines of like, if you had been born a male, you definitely would have been a great Caesar. And I feel like that really helps frame every other decision that she makes, because we now trust and believe that like everything that she's doing is carefully calculated, and it's not just as simple as like a protective mother trying to care for a child, but she's kind of got these like political goals and aspirations for wielding power in the ways that she can as a woman in this empire.
Yeah, I thought that that was a really interesting piece of this as well. And Connie Nielsen, who plays Lucilla, does such a good job navigating all of those things. And there's one little moment that I loved from her in this movie. I don't remember what Commodus was doing or what he was saying, but he was spouting off something. And there's just this moment when you see Lucilla looking at her brother, and it's this like flash across her eyes, and it's basically like, this dude gets to rule the empire and not me, this guy. Like, it's this just moment of disdain that you see like flash across her eyes of like, this yahoo, that I loved that. It's like, it's so real and so relatable, especially for like women in the workplace. I'm sure that a lot of us have had moments of like, we're in a meeting and somebody else is talking, and it's like, well, I know more than you, but okay, yeah, I got to keep a straight face, but like, this guy, this is what we're doing. And it was just so human and so fun to see that from her, of like, I could be doing this so much better. But I do appreciate that this film explores her kind of being between a rock and a hard place, and she knows her station and she knows her place in the empire as a woman, but she uses that space to the best of her ability. She uses that to her advantage. And even like her limitations, she's like, okay, I'm going to use these as best I can to accomplish my goals. And that's just so cool to see.
Yeah, it's so fun to see because arguably she's the smartest character in this entire movie. You
Yes.
know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's so ironic because you see these traditional forms of power, both from Commodus, but also from Maximus as well. You know, that like that fortitude and physical strength and overcoming, like his power and his influence in a lot of ways has come from his glory from the battlefields, you know, as a respected general, and that's his way to influence. But she has the toughest job in the toughest situation and positioning in this whole House of Cards, and somehow figures out how to navigate well. And it's amazing to see her steps. And so I feel like our House of Cards analogy is really like fitting for this because I forget her name. Underwood, Frank's wife. What's her name?
Blair.
Claire.
Blair? Claire?
Claire.
Something like that.
Claire. Yeah. We see that same level of like strategic decision making, critical thinking, high emotional intelligence, understanding of when to play her cards at what time. It's great. It's really juicy to see.
You know, I have not thought about House of Cards in quite some time. And this is making me want to rewatch it, which I don't actually want to rewatch it. I never finished the show. Yeah. But this conversation is kind of making me want to.
Yeah, the political maneuvering that you didn't get in this movie, you will
so
get. All of that and more.
It's true. It's true. I do love me some political maneuvering.
You do. Yes. It somehow satisfies you in a very, very special way.
It's so weird. It's such a niche desire that I have, where I'm like, yes, political maneuvering, let's go.
It's okay. I had to do a lot of self-reflection upon my sheer enjoyment and excitement of this movie. I really, like, as it's unfolding, I'm like, why am I having such a good time? I I I don't know, but I suppose I need to own my truth, and I'm having a great time.
Good. I'm glad. I'm glad that you had fun with
It's so
this.
much
Like,
fun.
that is excellent. That's what we want.
Yeah, good time at the movies, seeing Gladiator just fine apparently. And I was thinking about how I'm excited to see this in a theater with like modern technology and stuff in the sequel. So I'm curious for you. What are your thoughts about this upcoming sequel? It seems to very much focus on Lucius and his storyline. Uh, yeah, thoughts on like what do you want to see slash what do you hope that perhaps this next movie does that maybe Gladiator didn't do or could have done more of?
Okay, I'm not going to lie. The only aspect of this film that I'm presently excited for is Denzel Washington. Okay, like I did not realize that he was in this until I don't know, some trailer dropped and everybody was posting about it on social media and
Yeah,
the images of him as like
so
some
great.
sort of like a ruler or something and I'm like, "Yes. Let's freaking go. I am ready to see Denzel in the Roman Empire. I don't care what his role is. I want to see him being regal and just killing it. That's what I want."
Love it. I love it. And he seems to very much play a prominent character based on what I've seen in the trailer. Like he's definitely one of the big leads of the movie. So he won't be a side character who can get plenty of time with Denzel being regal in the Roman Empire as you wish.
Mm-hmm. I'm so pleased. I guess the other thing that I would like to see, having now watched Gladiator, would be more from Lucilla because she is apparently in this movie to
Mm-hmm.
some capacity. Connie Nielsen is in the cast list, and so I'm curious to see. You know, the Roman Empire probably hasn't changed from movie one to movie two, but our world has changed from movie one to movie two.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm curious to see if she will have a more prominent role or if she'll have more maybe things to do or maybe even more influence in the film. She has a lot of influence in Gladiator, but I'm curious to see what the 2024 version of her will look like and if she gets maybe more to do in this new film.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's one of the things that I'm most hopeful and excited to see in the sequel in comparison to the first one is like just more watering of the ideas. I think that Gladiator has a lot of ideas. I think that it is focused on many other things, and when those two can come together in a really powerful way, my gosh, we have a absolute banger of a movie. So I would love to see just clarity in ideas and themes that then are really like influencing and showcasing well in the plot and in the events of the plot. So I'm a little concerned because Napoleon, obviously some great like images and spectacle making, but like not a lot of clarity in the idea. So hopefully we get a stronger version in Gladiator 2. And there's so much in this day and age, and so much that we've already talked about in the original Gladiator, but especially now that I think would be really fascinating to explore through a context like the Roman Empire and gladiator fights around political systems, public persona, the power of narrative, the way that influence is wielded, like all of that would be so relevant right now. So I'm hopeful about that. And then I'm just here for some big spectacle. I love it. I'm gonna eat it up. So even if there are no ideas, I'm sure I will have a pretty good time in the sequel. So we shall see.
Yes, more fights. Let's get in the ring, guys. Let's go.
Oh, yeah. It'll be fascinating too to see how they string like Lucius's uh
Yeah.
background from the first movie into this sequel as well. And hopefully they do a good job of it because there could be some good interesting ideas there. Lucius has a really troubled childhood.
I'm saying, like, oh my gosh, everybody in this movie, I'm just like, okay, can we just get you some help? Like,
Yep.
let's Let's get you into therapy. Let's get you, I don't know, just in a better mental and emotional space. Can we be working toward health as opposed to just constant murder? But it is the Roman Empire, and
Yeah,
they
we don't do
conquered
that.
and plundered and
Mm-hmm.
destroyed land and, you know, subjugated people and enslaved them and all of that. So, like, it's the Roman Empire.
I don't think a lot of
And I
therapy was
just had to
happening in
keep
the Roman
reminding
Empire.
myself that.
Yeah. But I love that you are here to advocate for it.
I was like, guys, there's a better way. We don't have to do this. We can use our words. We don't have to use our swords and our fists.
Uh-huh. Yep.
It's fine. Again, I was watching Gladiator incorrectly, so I will hopefully come with a better mindset to Gladiator 2. And if not, at least I get to watch Denzel just killing it.
Just to be an absolute vision. Yeah.
I'm so excited.
It's your anchoring point.
I don't even care if he's a good guy or a bad guy. I don't care. He is going to be so good.
Yeah.
I'm ready.
Yeah. Great choice. Great choice by this team. and an interesting cast, I will say. We've got like Paul Mescal.
Yes. Pedro Pascal.
Pedro Pascal is, I think, one of the like evil emperors of some sort. So that'll be real juicy. Fun. We've got some great acting talent, honestly. So this should bode well for it. Like the three of them alone are incredible in what they do. So they really like hit the jackpot.
Yeah, they have such a good screen presence.
Yeah.
So yeah, I am hopeful that we have a better constructed story with some maybe more three-dimensional characters. You know, can we have some interesting stuff going on? Could we maybe have some character growth? I know that's a revolutionary thought, but if we could have a little growth or it doesn't even have to be growth, character change. They could devolve. I don't care. Yeah. If we could have some sort of movement for our characters in addition to all the spectacle.
Yes, very much so. Yeah. I'm hopeful with Paul Mescal in the leading role because Russell Crowe, I mean, he does what he needs to do in this movie, but he's very much like giant beefy man being powerful and like that's it, you know what I mean? And like he does that very well. Like very good, powerful, beefy man.
Absolutely.
Being powerful. But Paul Mescal has so much emotional depth in what he's able to convey, which I think will be really exciting to see like mid fight how that unfolds. So that'll be fun.
Yeah, I like it.
I'm excited and I'm hopeful.
Excellent.
Fun in November. All right. Well, we've done our homework. You have now watched Gladiator and are now prepped and primed to what you need to expect going into a movie about the Roman Empire.
Ready.
Yes.
I am now prepared.
Very much so. Well, this is our review and discussion of Gladiator, the original 2000 film. You can find it available on Amazon Prime for only a couple more days. And then I believe it will be available on to rent or buy or potentially on another streaming platform. But we don't know. But it is on Amazon Prime for, I think, a couple more days after this gets posted. So thank you for listening to this week's episode of Movies in Us. Our name sums it up. We're all about movies and the powerful ways we can connect with each other and the world around us. This podcast is about all of us and our shared stories. So everyone is welcome here, and we're so glad you spent time with us today. You can subscribe to this podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you tune to your favorite shows. Drop us a rating and review letting us know your thoughts about Gladiator. You can connect with us on Instagram, Threads, and TikTok at MoviesInUsPod or email us at moviesinaspod@gmail.com. We will be back next week to discuss the much anticipated film Megalopolis. We hope you have an amazing week, and we'll see you again very soon.